If a picture is worth 1,000 words, what can these pictures tell us about history? From not-so-innocent Halloween masks to creepy-looking Santas, you might remember some of this nightmarish nostalgia. At the time these things maybe seemed normal. But looking back, these things were a bit much, like scary clowns around kids. Some stories reveal morgues with haunting spirits circulating, and the images were snapped well before Photoshop was created. However, were these camera lovers able to twist the images to morph the lines between reality and fantasy even a century ago? You will have to see the pictures and decide for yourself if the ghosts lingering in the haunting background are real or not. Nevertheless, the photographs contain some of the darker stories and creepy oddities of the past 150 years. Keep watching to learn about haunting photographs from history that will change the way you look at the things you once considered normal. Say hello to early Mickey Mouse Club. When you think of the Mickey Mouse Club, you may think of the cute little song with a catchy rhythm, and all of the kids who became stars. However, this photo might change your mind about the Mickey Mouse Club. Before televisions were a staple in people's homes, those who wanted to watch Mickey Mouse had to go to local theaters to see their favorite cartoon characters. This photo shows hundreds of Mouseketeers, before they were called that, wearing masks while sitting to watch Mickey. We hope that all of the people under the masks enjoyed the show, and did not plot mass murder. Beware of a haunting Santa. Santa is supposed to be jolly and friendly, but what on earth is this a picture of? We can understand a female Santa. We are in the 21st century, so that part of the picture is not bothering us. The problem is that this Santa looks like she came straight out of a slasher movie from the 1990s, with burn marks across the face, lopsided glasses, and an unnatural bend in the back. Maybe the elves at the North Pole accidentally started a fire and Santa came through a little bit worse for the wear. Alternatively, maybe Santa is going to get you, and you should lock your door and board up your chimney this Christmas Eve. Robins make a haunting nest. Robins coming out and singing while bringing their bright colors to an otherwise dreary landscape are a true sign that spring is finally arriving. However, what about when they decide to make a nest inside human skull, furthermore lay eggs, hatch them, and raise their young in them? This photo is not from a horror film but taken in real life. We are so thankful that this photograph was taken in 1952, before color photography was a thing. Even without color, everything about this photograph is just eerie and wrong. Leave those robins alone. The morgue at Alcatraz may be haunted. As if the name Alcatraz was not enough to induce spine-tingling fear and apprehension, we give you a historical photo of the prison's morgue. The island off of San Francisco housed a maximum security prison for nearly 3 decades before closing in the 1960s, following a highly publicized escape. Allegedly, the morgue was used only once when a prisoner died, and the coroner did not make the ferry to the mainland. But the notorious prison has many secrets. How many people really died on this table? Do you see a ghost in this photo? This rat catcher is seriously happy. You may have seen a mouse scurrying around your house before and been absolutely petrified. But what about a rat? As you can see in this picture, a rat can be the length of your arm, and they are pretty ferocious. Imagine if your job was to crawl down into a city's underground and get rid of as many rats as possible. Rat catcher used to be a real job before modern pest control. Back in the 19th and early 20th centuries, many large cities employed rat catchers to dispose of these beady-eyed beasts before they could spread illnesses to the entire population. This particular rat catcher seems quite satisfied with a job well done. Plastic children's masks were haunting. Nowadays, plastic masks are a dime a dozen, and plenty of kids wear them whenever they feel like playing pretend. However, when these plastic masks came out in the 1970s, they weren't particularly kid-friendly. You might expect to see a well-dressed person sporting one of these freakishly creepy Halloween masks today, on a music video for a song that is deemed to be explicit. Even just looking at this photo, which allows us to step back in time to the 1970s, gives us the shivers. Indeed, no child wanted to wear this monstrosity on Halloween, just slasher-type teens and adults who tried to steal candy. Life-size plastic dolls look creepy. World War II brought about more changes than we can count. One is that the technology that led to the development of plastics came into the private sector, and in the 1940s plastic dolls began to be manufactured en masse. Prior to that time, dolls were made by hand, often out of corn husks or porcelain. This first generation of plastic dolls clearly did not pass the test of being child-friendly. The doll looks like it belongs in a horror movie. To make things worse, it's as big as a child. Just make sure you sleep with the light on. Bobbing for apples can be painful. There isn't too much wrong with bobbing for apples, unless you consider how many people are sticking their faces in the same pool of water and potentially transmitting disease. Nevertheless, this picture takes bobbing for apples to a whole new level of being a bit dangerous. The kids seem to be having a good time. However, notice that the two boys who are on the end, they seem to be hitting each other in the face with their apples. Moreover, the kids' hands appear tied behind their backs, which would absolutely not be permitted in the 21st century unless the person wanted a child abuse investigation. This briefcase is full of creepy eyes. The only redeeming feature of this picture is that the eyes are not human eyes but rather glass ones. Still, the appearance of the different glass eyes looking in different directions, with the light reflecting them, is deeply unsettling. Let's put this picture into a historical context and imagine that its owner was carrying it up and down the street, in and out of buildings, peddling his wares of glass eyes. Think about how you would respond if someone came up to you with this briefcase and asked if you might be interested in buying one. Should you get one that matches the color of your good eye or have two different colored eyes? The possibilities are endless, or not. This woman is infected with smallpox. The writing on this photo says, Lydia Jane had smallpox. Smallpox is possibly the disease that has shaped humanity more than any other. Since its origins in Egypt in the 3rd century BCE, the disease wiped out most Native Americans when Europeans landed in the New World. This picture should give a clue as to why smallpox has been so deadly throughout history. The woman has pimple-like blisters that come through even in the low-quality black and white photograph. The writing on the photo indicates that she may have survived, though she certainly would have been worse for wear. Before Photoshop, people still played with photos. Photoshop has been around only since the 1990s, however Calotype, which allows you to develop multiple photos from negatives, has been around for longer. Ever since Calotype first came out, people have been messing around with images, evidenced by an enormous baby gazing down lovingly at a mother in a baby carriage. This photo may not be all that creepy, compared to what photo editors come out with today. However, just think that this kind of hijinks was the kind of thing that set off Photoshop, and everything that has come since. There are easier ways to spread disease. Sweltering summer days are nothing new, nor is the need to cool off from them. However, modern refrigeration and freezing, which make the production of ice a breeze, have only been around for the past few decades. Before that, they spent a lot of time and energy producing 300-pound blocks of ice that had to be carted around to homes and businesses. With a cup of ice water hard to come by, these boys in the picture all decided to lick a community block of ice. Imagine how many people got sick of that one antic. No, she isn't pretending to be Santa Claus. In Victorian England and on the other side of the Atlantic, during the 1800s and early 1900s, dabbling in the occult became an increasingly respectable way of spending free time for the wealthy. One means of doing so was hiring mediums, who insisted they could contact the dead, enabling those left behind to have a conversation with the dearly departed. This picture is of a medium who tried to prove that she could contact the spirit world by covering herself in ectoplasm. However, she looks like she is probably just wearing cotton balls all over her face, which she probably is. This is what the atomic bomb explosion looked like from the ground. Can you imagine the horror that would settle in the pit of your stomach as you watched an atomic bomb drop out of an airplane and fall onto your city? The explosion would kill tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands, and cause massive radiation poisoning for those who survived. This photo was taken on the ground immediately as the explosion began. One can scarcely imagine someone this close surviving the blast, but thanks to him, we have this haunting photo of the horrors that humanity can unleash on itself. Integrating segregated schools was essential. Dorothy Counts, pictured above with boys mocking her, was the first African-American student to attend a school that had been exclusively white up until that time. From the jeers and humiliation, one can see that she faced how difficult her task was, but her face is filled with resolute determination not to be defeated. If you had any questions about how integration happened, it was not an inspiring, spine-tingling era. No, the people who led the way for integrating schools faced constant harassment from their white peers, who made no secret of their feelings about integration. War orphaned this child. Someone snapped this photograph in China during World War II. While the horrors of the Nazis in Europe tend to get the most attention from people who study World War II, no corner of the world was untouched. The Japanese military bombed the Shanghai South Railway Station in China. The result was complete devastation. Where there had once been a thriving city, this child's mother died in the hostilities. But a silver lining is that his father survived and they reunited. The real horror is that humanity seems to have learned nothing, and we continue bombing civilians to this day. This family of mannequins served as nuclear bomb test dummies. What could be sweeter than a child at his mother's knee while his two brothers play on the sofa? Or more picturesque than a perfectly coiffed woman in the 1950s sitting with her children, high heels and pencil skirt intact? Oh, but don't worry, she won't stay perfectly intact, and neither will her children. They constructed this family of mannequins to serve as test dummies for nuclear bomb testing that the U.S. carried out during the Cold War. You may have seen movies pay homage to this disturbing era in our country's history, with dummy ghost towns built near nuclear testing grounds. Cuba's Boneyard was a macabre place. In parts of Europe and Cuba, there was once a custom requiring families to pay to keep their dearly departed interred. When the families stopped paying, a gravedigger would dig up the body and bring it to a boneyard so that someone with financial means could use the grave. By the end of the 19th century, the boneyard was 30 feet deep in Cuba. This picture shows two men frolicking and horseplaying with some human skulls. No biggie, because apparently, having boneyards for people whose families couldn't pay to keep them interred was a pretty common thing. She was spared from the Nazis. When Hitler's anti-Semitic actions kicked up in 1938, a program called Kindertransport began that transported 10,000 Jewish children from Germany and Poland into Britain. Jewish children continued arriving in Britain as late as 1940, and there are many stories of people who risked and sometimes gave their lives to rescue Jews from the Nazis. Yet many Jews did not survive, as 6 million perished in the flames. This heart-wrenching picture is of a child ripped from her family, and she likely never saw them again. She lived, but her family most likely perished. A woman digging a grave. Nowadays, heavy machinery takes up the task of grave digging, so most people don't even think about the chore that it was before modern technology. During World War II, Australia, like many other places, experienced a severe labor shortage. Why? Because of all of the men who had gone off to fight in the war. The people dealt with the labor shortage by pitching in whatever way they could. This picture is of a woman in her 80s digging a grave, a task that was indeed necessary though not particularly desirable. Yet at the heart of the picture is the story of a community coming together and getting things done.